Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 8th of November, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So apologies for being kind of MIA for the last week and a half, I guess. I think the last time I did an episode was last Monday, and of course after today's episode I will be MIA again until the 18th of November, which is a Monday as well, because I'll be in DevCon. Now obviously I'm super excited to go to DevCon, super excited to see all of you, but yeah, preparing for that with all the election noise over the last few days just meant that I was just way too busy to be able to do an episode. But I'm back today. I'm doing an episode today. This will probably be longer than the normal episode. As you can see, I have a lot of tabs open, a lot of things to discuss today. But yeah, as I said, there'll be no refuels until at least the 18th of November. I'm not going to promise one for the 18th of November. I've kind of taken the approach with the refuel now of just doing one when I feel like it. Not because there's not because there's not anything to talk about, not because of really any reason. Just more of the fact that I kind of struggle to stick to a regular cadence these days, and I don't want it to be kind of like I promised that I'll do an episode on this day and then I miss that day and then I feel bad and you guys feel bad. It's more of I'm going to do it when I feel like it. Now I'm going to try to do more than like once a week, obviously, but that's just how I'm playing it now. And there's probably going to be like weekend episodes instead of weekday episodes as well. We'll see how I go with that. But anyway, enough about that. As I said, looking forward to seeing you all in DevCon, but I'll talk about that towards the end some more. Going to jump straight into the news, and I think the biggest piece of news over the last week and a half, the thing that we must discuss, is the presidential election. Now, of course, Trump won the election, beat out Kamala Harris there. It's funny, in the Discord channel, actually, a couple of weeks ago, I said that I think Kamala Harris is going to win. I have no real insight on US politics, but I just kind of threw that out there because I knew that most of the crypto ecosystem is like pretty heavily in favor of Trump winning, or because of the crypto side of things. Obviously, the Democrats have been extremely hostile towards crypto, and I've given my thoughts on that over the last, I guess, like couple of years now, pretty much. But of course, Trump won, which means everyone thinks it's going to be a golden age for crypto. And honestly, I don't think that's a wrong kind of thing to think, because if you look at the last maybe 2 years, I guess, of politics in crypto, the Democrats have been extremely hostile towards crypto. Yes, we've made progress. We got the ETFs approved. A lot of stuff's kind of been happening, but it's like we've been doing it with two hands tied behind our back, right? Because you had lawsuits lobbied from the SEC against things like against exchanges like Coinbase, Kraken, and Binance. You had the DOJ go after Binance, which I actually think was somewhat justified, given that I guess Binance had been operating as cowboys for so long, but at the same time they paid their fine, and now now they're basically just continuing on as an exchange. CZ went to jail for a few months, but seems like he enjoyed it from his tweets since he's been out. But yeah, a bit bizarre there, but I can understand it. I guess if it's only a few months, you go in and you're probably in like a cushy prison because you're not a violent criminal or anything like that, being CZ. But anyway, other than that, yeah, the Democrats have generally, especially the SEC, obviously, has been extremely hostile towards crypto. So obviously, with now a Trump admin in, I guess, January when he gets inaugurated here, people are expecting a lot more positivity towards crypto generally. And I think that if you look at what's going to happen, Gary Gensler himself he can't technically be fired until I guess like he's got his term till 2026, so he can't technically be fired by Trump, but it is customary for the SEC chair to resign if they're part of a different party, and then someone else will become chair. It's looking like not Hester Pierce, but one of the other Republican people in the SEC will become the chair once, I guess, like Trump is inaugurated there. So from that perspective, that's already incredibly bullish. So if we only had that, right, if that's all we had, like Gensler stepping down, a pro-crypto Republican stepping up to be chair of the SEC, that would be, that would be enough to kind of offset the last at least 2 years of hostilities, because of the fact that the SEC has been public enemy number one for crypto. But it goes way beyond that, because not only did Trump get elected, but also a lot of people that were pro-crypto, a lot of politicians that were pro-crypto also got elected and beat out anti-crypto politicians. So there's been a huge kind of shift. And I don't know if like the crypto vote was responsible for this as much as just general politics was, but there's been a huge shift in the US government now towards pro-crypto candidates. Now, of course, obviously, they're still politicians. We can't trust them on their word. We have to hold them to account. We have to make sure that they do what they say. But as I said, because the Democrats have been so hostile, anything's better than that. And just the SEC SEC chair being replaced is an absolutely massive, I guess, like win for crypto. I'm very curious to see if the lawsuits against Coinbase and Kraken and Binance and so on and so forth, like Uniswap Labs, all that, are withdrawn with a new SEC chair. The person, I can't remember his name. I think his name's Mark. That the person who is likely to become SEC chair has already made statements, I believe today or yesterday, saying that if he was to become chair, he would pause all enforcement actions. So that's technically not withdrawing the already, I guess, like put forward actions, because that's got a bit more complications with it, but pausing until there's proper regulatory regimes and regulatory kind of frameworks put in place for crypto. I can't even begin to tell you guys how much of a massive unlock that is for crypto generally. I think that this is a bigger win for crypto than the BTC and ETH ETFs, because now we don't have to essentially, I guess, try and build with two hands tied behind our back. You're going to see things like DeFi protocols switching on their fees. You're going to see things like teams doing ICOs again. You're going to see things like tokens being more fairly launched, all because of the fact that the SEC, I mean, is very likely to be way friendlier than it has been in the US. And you're going to see crypto conferences in the US now. Like, I can imagine maybe a DevCon being in the US. That's how, I guess, like different the, I guess, political landscape is. But I don't know. Maybe we won't see that. But that's how different it now is, or is going to be. And we're going to hopefully get regulatory clarity, because then the TradFi ecosystem can get even more deeply involved. They're already involved. Obviously, you have like BlackRock and others tokenizing things, doing treasuries on chain, all that good stuff there. But we're just going to take this to the next level. Like, I honestly can't stress enough like how much of an unlock this is here, regardless of your politics. Like, I know people, I mean, I'm in Australia. I don't have any say on US politics. I can't vote. Right? It doesn't affect me directly, of course, except in the crypto context here. But I think regardless of politics, you know, take all of that out. Just look at the crypto side of things. This is objectively better for crypto than what the Democrats have been, I think. Like, you'd be insane to, I guess, like fight against that. And it's not to say that you agree with every policy of Trump or every policy, of the Republicans, every policy of the Democrats. It's got nothing to do with that. It's more, I think, you know, in this context, like, who's better for crypto? And I think objectively at this point, because the Democrats have been so hostile, even if, as I said, nothing else is done, even if only we get a new SEC chair, that is objectively way better than what we've had in the past. New pro-crypto SEC chair here. At least that's my view on things there. But I know, you know, there's different feelings from different people in the ecosystem with regards to the election. I understand that my listeners and viewers on the Refuel are from all kind of walks of life, not just in the US, but in Europe, and you all have different political views. I try my hardest not to give my political views on this, or try to get too political with these things, unless it's in the context of crypto. Because what I care about and what affects me is that, as I said, I can't vote, I can't change anything. I'm not a US citizen. I don't live in the US. I don't ever plan to live in the US. Like, it doesn't affect me directly what happens there, and for most issues, except crypto. Crypto obviously affects me. It's my whole life. Like, I'm heavily invested in it. So for me, I consider this a positive personally. But everything else, I'm not making any comments on that. You guys can have your own views on that. It doesn't bother me that there. I do think generally though that like if I would dive into politics a little bit, I do think generally it's kind of insane how much of a circus it is in the US in terms of how long the campaigning is. It's like, what, almost 2 years of campaigning. It's absolutely insane, right? Like, you spend basically half of your, I guess, term in office just campaigning. Like, if you're the existing president and you want to go for re-election, you essentially spend 2 years, so half of your term, just campaigning to be voted in again. And during, I guess, like at least a year of that, nothing really gets done. It's kind of gridlock because you're basically focusing on the campaign stuff. So I do think that is insane, especially in Australia, where our campaign kind of, I guess, time, the time spent on campaigns is like 6 weeks. So it's completely different. It's insane to me, but it is what it is, and that's just the way the system is there. But yeah, anyway, quite a positive development for crypto generally. The markets have obviously reacted in accordance with that, and specifically for Ethereum, this is a huge boon because of the fact that Ethereum had been the main target of all this regulatory action, the Ethereum ecosystem, I should say, not just with the ETH ETF stuff, which ended up getting approved, of course, but Obviously, there was a lot of drama around that, but within the DeFi protocols on Ethereum, like Uniswap, I saw even other projects like Immutable got a Wells notice from the SEC. Coinbase is huge into the Ethereum ecosystem with Base and so on and so forth. So this is, I think, a huge thing for the Ethereum ecosystem specifically, and a huge unlock for it. And I think the ETH price has reacted to that in a positive way, not just against USD, but against other assets, especially Bitcoin. I think that that regulatory kind of, I guess, foot on our throat is off now, and the market will definitely, I believe, in not straight away, but I mean, obviously this week's been good, but it's not always going to be like that. But I do think the market will price that in, and I do think the ETH having an ETF is a huge boon, because it means that the more TradFi players can get involved with ETH now as well, without having to worry about any of the regulatory stuff there. So anyway, that's enough on that. Moving on to the next bit of news here. I guess this is related to what I was just talking about, but I did want to give a shout out to Polymarket. So Polymarket is the prediction market that everyone was looking at when it comes to the elections. Obviously, it had been pretty popular for the last few months in people betting on who they thought was going to win. There was a lot of news, I guess, like articles about it. There was a lot of focus on it. I believe even kind of Trump made comments about it, or the Republicans made comments about it. So there was a lot of focus on it. Now, of course, I think, I don't know if I've given this opinion on the Refuel before, but I've given it in the Discord channel. I think the term prediction market is, I mean, I'm not going to say like misleading, but it's just kind of the wrong term, because in my eyes, when I look at these markets, I don't look at them as being necessarily predictive. Like, and the thing is that you can get, there's many examples of these markets that have not been able to predict anything. Like, for example, the ETH ETF is the extreme example. You can go look at that market. It was basically down to under 10% chance, and then went straight to like 100% 3 days before they were approved. So the market, and honestly, like I thought that was like completely underpricing it at that point, because of the fact that all the facts I outlined leading up to the ETH ETF being approved. So just that as the extreme example, it wasn't predictive of anything, really. And then you can actually look at other things as well. Like on the presidential election, it got it right to an extent, where essentially Trump, I think, was like 65% odds a few days before the election. And it got it right there. But then you had the other, I guess, political races, such as winning the popular vote. I think Trump was like 30% or something chance to win the popular vote, or even, maybe even less than that. And it seems like he's won the popular vote. I think the vote counting's not done yet. But yeah, it seems like he may have won that. Same with the other kind of things, like winning the Senate, winning the House, stuff like that. So not just within politics, but within everything. I just don't think that these things are necessarily too predictive. It's more just like a traditional betting market. You're basically just betting on what you think is going to happen. So I think calling them a prediction market may be just like the wrong way to go about it, but it's beyond me now. Like, that's just my personal opinion on these things. But another reason I bring it up is because there was some, I guess, discussion around if Polymarket is built on Ethereum or not, because technically Polymarket is built on the Polygon proof of stake chain, which there's been many debates over the years about if the proof of stake chain is a layer 2 or not. I don't think the proof of stake chain is a layer 2 in its current construction. It does want to get upgraded to a layer 2 probably next year at this point, but as it currently exists, it's I mean, at best a side chain, at worst, a different layer 1. So while you could say it's built within the Ethereum ecosystem, because Polygon is extremely close to Ethereum, and obviously building within it and building L2s on it, and the AG layer and all these different things here, I don't necessarily think it's accurate to say that it's built on Ethereum. But in saying that, the Polygon proof of stake chain handled all this traffic like a champ. Obviously, Polymarket had a lot of traffic heading into the election and handled it like an absolute champ. And honestly, like, the proof of stake chain today is more decentralized than a lot of the layer 2s, because it has a decentralized validator set. It doesn't have admin keys and stuff like that. So really, I don't think this should be something that we don't celebrate just because it's not a official layer 2 on Ethereum, right? So yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, shout out that there, because there's a tweet here from Sandeep, which you can check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, that was great to see that they were able to handle that there. All right, so moving on to some quite bullish news here. So Matthew Siegel here, or Siegel from Van Eck, tweeted out that the state of Michigan has filed a disclosure here about their new ETH ETF holdings. So they are a top 5 holder of ETH and ETH. So this is the ETF tickers, and they actually own more ETH than they do BTC in dollar terms. And that was before, I believe, the recent run up in ETH. So it's probably worth even more now. But this is crazy, guys. I mean, mean, this is what I said the ETFs unlock. It unlocks entities like state pension funds to be able to invest in this stuff. And the fact that they've invested more in ETH than BTC is surprising, honestly, because as I've said before, like you would expect them to go either 50-50 or market cap weighted. Well, it seems like they've just like ETH more than BTC, right? Which, I mean, I understand totally because I like ETH more than BTC, but it's great to see that these pension funds aren't just buying BTC, they are buying ETH. So it really validates that thesis that ETH is going to get a bid here from these ETFs. I mean, as I said before, ETH's ETF inflows are starting to ramp up. And I think that once ETH gets into the 3,000s, they're really going to start ramping up, because if you actually go back and look at when the ETH ETF launched, what the price of ETH was, it was around 3,600, I believe. And then from there, it actually went down to 2,000. So if you had bought an ETF during that time, you weren't doing very well, and especially against BTC. That's why you've seen a lot of inflows into BTC versus ETH, because BTC has just been performing better. But now the trade is, well, all this regulatory kind of crap is off ETH. ETH is down like pretty bad against BTC, I could say. It's still very far from all-time high, even though BTC is like in price discovery, basically. So the better trade is to buy ETH instead of BTC here. And I think that's why you're going to keep seeing more and more of, I guess, like ETH inflows coming. Yes, the BTC inflows are very strong. It has had one of its strongest, if not strongest days ever today. I believe BlackRock took in over $1 billion, which is just insane for a kind of daily intake there. But I really do think we're going to start seeing these ETH inflows ramp up aggressively as we move into the 3,000s, 4,000s, and all-time high and beyond, of course. I mean, I'm still as bullish as ever on ETH going to 15, 20K this cycle. I haven't changed my opinion on that. You know, I actually may have become even more bullish on that, given that that the regulatory regime is now completely shifted. It literally did a 180. It is completely opposite to what we've had the last 2 years. So if ETH is beaten down because of that, and I'm not saying it's only because of that, but that is a big reason, then imagine ETH in a regime, a regulatory regime that is extremely positive. That is the complete opposite of what we've had. So I do believe that it could go that high. Now, obviously, that's not investment advice. I don't think that you should aim for that for your own personal targets. If you have, you should definitely play it safer than that. You shouldn't just like risk it all and wait till 20K or anything like that. I wouldn't. I would never do that, something like that. But at the same time, I just look at everything. I look at the fact that the ETH ETF hasn't really even had the inflows yet, and ETH is where it is. It's still worth over $300 billion. It's almost worth $350 billion today, even without good ETF inflows. So if we do get those good ETF inflows, which I expect we will, and BTC is also like absolutely roaring. The whole market's on fire next year because just everything is up only due to the new regulatory regime, and it's just pricing all of that in. And we're in a proper crypto bull market, which I actually think started the other day. Like I think we're in the proper crypto bull market now, like the one where retail will actually come back and Bitcoin dominance will go down. That's a key indicator to me, and everything else will start going up again. If we take all of that into account and look at just the market cap as well, like I truly believe that ETH can go to 15 to 20K as a cycle top, and we'll see. Maybe it only goes to 15 instead of 20. That's fine too. It's still within that range. But I'm personally most excited for 10K because I've been calling for 10K since 2019, and I have a thing where once ETH hits 10K, I'm actually going to get an Ethereum tattoo. I haven't got an Ethereum tattoo yet, but that was my thing. I actually said this all the way back in like 2019. I said, you know what? If ETH gets to 10K, I'll get a tattoo, and I've just wanted to get it because Ethereum has been such a huge thing for my life, such a huge impact on my life. It's not going to be some cringe thing like what Mike Novogratz got, the Terra Luna tattoo. Like that's really bad because of the fact that Terra collapsed. Obviously, like I don't think Ethereum is going to collapse or anything like that, but it had such a huge effect on my life, not just from the investing in ETH side of things, but everything else. Like it really did change my life there. But anyway, enough on that. I'm rambling. Moving on. So this has been a long time coming. This has been something that the community has been asking for, which is a new transparency report from the Ethereum Foundation about what they're up to. So as you guys know, the Ethereum Foundation is a bit of a black box. We don't really get much insight into what's happening there outside of some posts about what they're funding in terms of grants that they're giving out and posts from core devs and core researchers. But as of today, AR, the executive director of the Ethereum Foundation, has shared this on Twitter, which is basically the Ethereum Foundation report for the years of 2022 and 2023. This is really worth the read, guys. It's not too long, and it's just really worth the read because it really does detail what the EF has been doing and what they're doing into the future, and the fact that they're not just sitting on their hands doing nothing. They're playing an absolutely massive role within the Ethereum ecosystem, but they're just doing it from behind the scenes here. Now, what I think most people were concerned about was where all the money was going. So Essentially, the EF budget per year is between $100 and $150 million. You can see here in 2023, it was $135 million. And then they break down where this money actually went. So, I mean, a pretty large chunk of it, about a quarter of it, went to L1 research and development. So that's about $35 million there. New institutions got almost $50 million, and community development was about $17 million. Now, interesting enough, they spent about $15 million on applied zero knowledge. So applied ZK here, which is great. And then you can see the breakdown between internal and external. But I'm not going to spoil this report for you guys. I want you to go check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And they also detail how much money they have currently. So they currently have about $180 million worth of non-crypto assets, so fiat and fiat equivalents. And then they have about $800 million worth of crypto assets. Almost all of it is in ETH, and that is verifiable on-chain. You can actually see their ETH address on-chain, so that is not a secret there. And then also, I just wanted to give a massive shout-out to all of this art. So as you see me scrolling through here, this art is just so cool. Like, this is art that I haven't seen before, so I think this was specifically made for this report. And honestly, like, I hope I can use this for maybe even my presentation at the Bankless Summit, because I was struggling to get art for it. I was just using AI to generate it. I don't know if these are AI generated or not. They may be, but they're awesome. And for those of you listening to the podcast, I'll link this in the YouTube description below. You can go check it out for yourself. But yeah, I just thought that was really cool. It's a nice touch to this report here. But one thing I did want to mention is how funny it is how this was like the main concern 2 months ago from people. This is like the main source of FUD. It's like, oh, what's the Ethereum Foundation spending money on? You know, ETH down bad because the EF is just so badly organized. We need more transparency. And then this comes out today and there's freaking crickets. Like, I'm not even seeing anyone talk about this outside of core Ethereum people. Like, all the people that were FUDding it aren't talking about this anymore. And also, most, if not all of the ETH FUD has just completely evaporated simply because ETH has gone up in price. And I think I've been pretty adamant about this over the last few months, even years. And I've repeated myself so much on this. And Grack Attack, one of the Daily Gwei Discord veterans, or very active Daily Gwei Discord person, kind of calls it a sermon that I give, where I come on here and I tell you guys that the only reason that ETH and Ethereum get so much hate is because of the price. Like, I mean, not the only reason, but like 90% of the reason is because of the price action. If ETH is doing well in price action, all that FUD will magically disappear. And then I give that kind of sermon, as you will, and then you guys feel good about it for a couple of days, but then all the FUD gets spread again, and you kind of start feeling bad about it, and then I have to give the same sermon again. So as I said, I feel like a broken record. I've talked about this so much before. But essentially, when you kind of look at the facts here and look at the way the ecosystem is, narrative follows price. That is like my mantra. This is something that I've talked about for so long now. Narrative follows price. So the fact that like I'm seeing no one really talk about this outside of Ethereum circles, this Ethereum Foundation report, the fact that most of the ETH FUD evaporated, just again verifies or validates that thesis that narrative follows price. And it should be obvious at this point that that's what happens. So I'm glad that we're probably going to get like a reprieve from a lot of this ETH FUD for a while, especially because we have L2 now. So essentially we have an answer to the high gas fee thing, because L1 gas fees are already going up and they'll just keep getting higher and higher due to activity going up, due to ETH price going up. And I'm going to talk about L2 fees and blobs and all that in a sec, or I guess later in the episode. But yeah, anyway, enough ranting about that. You can go check out the Ethereum Foundation report. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, moving on. So as you guys know, inclusion lists has been a huge roadmap item for Ethereum for quite a while now, and basically became a main focus after Tornado Cash was sanctioned back in, how long ago now? August of 2022. So it's been over 2 years since that happened. And of course, censorship resistance on Ethereum has been an open question. It's like, how censorship resistant are we? How can we make censorship resistance better? Like, how do we basically rein in the tyranny of the builders and the relayers and so on and so forth? So there's been just a ton of work done on inclusion lists for quite a while now, but as of what day was this? I think this was the 6th of November. So as of a couple of days ago, a few days ago, an EIP was officially put forward for something called FOCIL, or FOCIL, which basically details a path to inclusion lists in the network. So this is EIP 7805, and So he spoke here, shared this on Twitter, where he said, today, block production on Ethereum is centralized. 2 block builders are responsible for constructing more than 85% of all blocks. This is obviously an issue that needs to be rectified here. So essentially what FOCIL does, or FOCIL, I don't know how they're pronouncing it, but I'm just going to say FOCIL, allows multiple inclusion list proposers chosen randomly from the decentralized set of validators to impose constraints on builders' blocks. Builders must either include the transactions selected by the inclusion list proposers or have their blocks deemed invalid invalid by attesters. This is a really cool way to do inclusion lists because it essentially means that and this really only works, I think, because Ethereum has such a wide validator set and such a distributed validator set and has a lot of solo stakers. But essentially, it means that these blocks will not be able to be attested to. So, like, I don't want to get this wrong here. You should actually read the EIP for yourself because it gets quite a bit more technical than what I'm going to talk about here. But essentially what this does is it turns it on its head and does exactly what we want to do, which is give power back to the validators. So the builders are extremely constrained in this world. If this gets approved and put into the network, the builders are extremely constrained in this world. They can't just essentially censor willy-nilly or censor as they see fit because there's a risk of their blocks being deemed invalid by the network, which means they're going to potentially lose money that they would have otherwise made. And as I've argued before, I think that the top builders are always going to be the ones that are able to make the most money, right? Because they're the ones that are able to pay the most money to validators to get their blocks included here. So this is just a really, really nice solution to the, I guess, like issue of censorship on Ethereum. We can never 100% solve it. Like these networks are not censorship proof, they're censorship resistant. And this goes for pretty much every crypto network except maybe the fully private ones. But I don't expect Ethereum L1 to ever be fully private for a bunch of different reasons. The biggest reason is the fact that critical bugs in the, I guess, core protocol become harder to deal with, especially when it's related to like inflation bugs. So yeah, and it also is more expensive to do private transactions, and especially on Ethereum L1, which is already expensive. Maybe down the line we get it when we kind of snarkify the base layer and put more kind of ZK tech into the base layer. But yeah, not anytime soon. But FOCIL here aims to address most of, I guess, the issues we see with censorship on the network today. So just great to see that this has been officially proposed as an EIP here. You can go check this out for yourself for more details. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But I just want to give like a shout out to the people who worked on this. You know, this kind of stuff is not easy, guys. Like this is really difficult. This is the result of potentially tens of thousands of hours of collective work done by some of the smartest people in this entire ecosystem. And they're doing it for the benefit of Ethereum. Like, yes, okay, they're paid to do it by the Ethereum Foundation, but you guys know that these people aren't paid like millions and millions and millions of dollars to do this. Like they're doing it for the game, for the love of the game, essentially, right? And the fact that they're doing it from that lens means that we get better solutions, I believe. Like, I'm not to say that I don't think people should be paid more. Of course they should, especially Ethereum researchers and core developers here. But I think the point is that this stuff is really hard to do. It nerd snipes the smartest people in the ecosystem, and smart people aren't necessarily driven by money. They're driven by hard problems. Like they want to solve hard problems, and Ethereum has an endless list of hard problems to solve, and inclusion list was one of them. So if this is as good as it seems to be on the surface and it gets included in the network, we after more than 2 years of research into this, we finally get something that can constrain builders, which is, again, on the Ethereum roadmap and has been on the Ethereum roadmap for years now, and is part of the endgame of Ethereum there. But anyway, you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, moving on. So just wanted to share this quick tweet thread here. So you've heard me talk about EOF for a very long time now, the EVM object format, which is a bunch of EIPs that have been slated to go in every hard fork for like the last, I guess, like 3 hard forks, and have just been pushed out due to various different reasons. I'm not going to go through all the reasons, but like the main reason is essentially that they weren't deemed as important as other EIPs, and they've been pushed out here. But a lot of people were asking, what's the benefit of EOF? Like, what do we actually get out of this? Well, Cairo here put together a really, really great tweet thread going through and putting the numbers on what benefit we get. So essentially here it says at Succinct Labs residency, their benchmarks revealed that ZK proving EOF is 3 times more efficient and runs 2.69 times faster than the current EVM version. So essentially we get a massive improvement in ZK proving. So just that, like just taking that on the surface, not even looking at the numbers outside of that, not looking at the details of that, you can already tell why that's a huge unlock, because EOF does not just apply to layer 1, it also applies to layer 2s, and layer 2s are building EVM. So if the layer 2s get cheaper ways to prove ZK, then the layer 2s get better. The layer 2s get cheaper for users. So this has massive, implications for the entire Ethereum or EVM ecosystem here at layer 1, layer 2s, and even side chains and other chains, right? So when you look at it from kind of that perspective, and you read this thread, you can actually see the I guess like benefits of EOF now. Instead of me just telling you that it's cool and it's getting included, and instead of other people telling you that, there are actually hard numbers put to this now. So you can go check out this tweet thread for more details on that. But I thought it was worth highlighting for you guys there. All right, so there is a short-lived Pectra testnet now live called Mekong or Mekong. So this is a pre-DevCon treat, as Tim Biker likes to say here. You can use it to try out all of the EIPs that are going into Pectra, which is, I believe, still due for, going live on the network by March of next year. But this includes, obviously, Max EB and a bunch of other EIPs here. You guys know that my one of the most anticipated EIPs for me is Max EB, because I would love to see the network consolidate their validators. I would love to see overall bandwidth on the network come down so that we can keep scaling up blobs, especially. But yeah, if you want to get involved with this testnet, you can. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out how to do so. But yeah, we're in testnet season for Pectra, which is great. But yeah, it does seem like we won't get it live on the network till March, but that's okay. We were expecting that. There's literally nothing. No surprise there. It could even happen as late as April. We don't know. As per usual, it's dependent on the testing. If things go wrong, if things need to change, so on and so forth. But currently, I'm targeting March in terms of my estimates here. My personal estimates, not estimates of the core devs from what I've seen. But yeah, exciting times there. All right, so Nethermind has announced something interesting over the last couple of days, which is their own rollup. So this is going to be a based rollup on Ethereum, of course, not anywhere else. Why would you launch a based rollup anywhere else? It's not, that doesn't make any sense, right? Ethereum is the best place to launch it. But essentially, this is like the holy grail of rollups, and it obviously isn't like a silver bullet, but it's basically what like every rollup should aim to be. So the details of this is that the Nethermind, I guess it's not called the Nethermind rollup. It's called Surge, which is essentially just the name that they've given to it here, and you can actually see all the details on the website, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But essentially, it doesn't target, I guess, like regular users, which is an interesting kind of differentiation point here. It's targeting AI agents and builders and devs to explore the boundaries of Ethereum. So basically, it's meant to be a testing ground for pushing Ethereum as hard as can be pushed, essentially, because Nethermind has been working on that with their client software as well. They're going to be stage 2 at launch, which is a pretty big promise, because there are no, I guess, like rollups today that are stage 2, besides a couple that have basically no usage. As you guys know, Base is still stage 0. They're almost at stage 1. Arbitrum 1 is at stage 1, but most is at like stage 0, essentially still. So this launching at stage 2 is a pretty big deal, I think. But we'll have to see once they go live how they actually launch, if they're actually truly stage 2. L2Bit will be the ultimate arbiters of that. But they're also launching as a based rollup, which there was an episode the other day on Bankless with Justin Drake. You should go check out. Based rollups, as I said, not a silver bullet, but like they are maybe the holy grail of rollups in terms of what you get out of it. Use the L1 as a sequencer, get interoperability with other based rollups, basically be very tightly coupled with Ethereum L1 while still being able to move fast as a rollup here. And still being able to have your own, I guess, kind of things like your own different virtual machines, your own different developer environments, your own culture, stuff like that, but being based. And they're using ETH for gas without any native tokens. Obviously, a no-brainer there to do that. And they're part of the gigagas era of Ethereum, or I guess like the L2s that are targeting gigagas, which is Base, Rise, Mega ETH, a bunch of others out there. But essentially, they're leveraging their own client, so their Nethermind client, to basically achieve this here. So I'm very interested to see what happens with this, because if they're specifically targeting things like AI agents and bots and builders building for those agents, and not necessarily targeting regular users, I guess you could say, like real human users, and they've got all these other goodies like the stage 2 at launch being based, basically targeting gigagas, so just scaling up as much as humanly possible. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here. And I should mention, this is also built on the Tycho stack. So Tycho has been the leaders in based rollups for quite a while now. So this is the Surge is built on that there. And they're also going to have a bunch of other goodies as well. If you scroll down to the bottom of the website, you can actually see this. They're going to have pre-confirmations, so no need to wait for 12-second Ethereum blocks. You're pretty much going to get very, very fast transaction, I guess, pre-inclusion, you could call it, or pre-confirmation. They're going to be proving it using a TEE proving infrastructure from Rollup Boost. They're going to be doing block production and sequencing with the Nethermind client and rollup boost, and they're going to be seamlessly integrating all of their layers for unified liquidity. So yeah, as I said, a lot of promises here, a lot of promises that sound extremely exciting, but if there was any team that I'd trust to deliver on this, it's definitely the Nethermind team. They're absolutely awesome. They've just gotten better over time. Their client is just amazing, honestly. Like, I use it and it's been great. I haven't had any issues with it there, but yeah, I'm curious to see what happens with this. But you can go check out their website and the Twitter thread here for all the details, but I'm super excited about that there. All right, so speaking of Base, they have their fault proofs now live on mainnet. So this hasn't brought them up to stage 1 just yet, as a stage 1 rollup just yet. They're still stage 0, but this basically gets them almost there. And this is something that has been requested for a very long time from the community. You know, when fault proofs, when fraud proofs, because without them, it's kind of useless, right? You're not really an L2 at all, if you or an optimistic rollup L2 at all if you don't have these things. But as of, this was actually a while ago now, over a week ago, as of October 31st, fault proofs are now live on the Base mainnet. So you can go check out the blog post for all the details on that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so, but I just realized I'm already at 35 minutes and I have more than about half of the content still left to go. So I'm going to just run through some of these rather quickly. Moving on, so something interesting from the Swell ecosystem. So Swell L2 is being migrated to Optimism. So I believe that they're originally building an L2 as part of the Polygon ecosystem and using the Polygon CDK, but they're actually moving over to the Optimism superchain and will be building as an optimistic rollup built on the OP stack. So very interesting move here. Don't know if it's going to be the right or wrong move yet. Obviously, this is all very early, very new. But one thing I will say is that this is the value of building a superchain, because what this does is it essentially gives a network effect to the, I guess, stack, the OP stack, the Polygon CDK stack, the Arbitrum Orbit stack. By building in that ecosystem there, you essentially get access to the rest of the ecosystem that's already built. And that, again, is why I believe a lot of these rollups are going to become based on Ethereum. Because if you want to get access to all of Ethereum, then you need to basically be based. So you need to be able to do things in an interoperable way, which means essentially you need to swallow your pride as an ecosystem and say, okay, well, we are a huge ecosystem, but at the same time, we don't want to be isolated from everything. You can actually think of this like countries. So imagine if the US was just isolated on its own. It had no trade agreements with other countries. It didn't do any trade with other countries. Its ports were closed. Everything was closed. Like, its airports were closed. Its seaports were closed. It was just its own economy, right? It was basically like a fully circular economy. It could still be massive. It could still be big. They could still be doing a lot of commerce, right? And still have huge GDP numbers. But they could have more, right? It would be much smaller than what they have, because everything would have to be done in-house. So it's the same when it comes to these super chains, when it comes to these different L2s. If they want to grow as big as possible, then it's better to have a bigger slice of a huge pie than the whole pie, because the whole small pie, because you have like a way bigger pie to choose from here. So if you think about it from that perspective, I do think that all of these things, all the lines here are going to be blurred, and all of them are going to play with each other nicely. It doesn't matter if they're part of the Optimism superchain, or the Polygon one, or the Arbitrum one. I do believe they're all just going to eventually play very nicely with each other, because it's just a network effect. You want to get access to that liquidity. You want to get access to that user base. You want to get access to that infrastructure. And it's the same is true for international trade between different countries. The ones that have closed themselves off are the very poor ones, right? Like, they're not the rich countries. The richest countries in the world are the ones that have free, open, very, efficient, very big trade deals with all other countries, and being able to balance that with producing your own kind of things, but also importing what you can't produce, or importing things that are too expensive to produce, and then just like leveling up your economy that way there. But yeah, interesting to see where this goes with Swell, but that's not the first, but like one of the first, I guess, major migrations that's happened within the Ethereum ecosystem in terms of like L2 hopping, I guess you could call it. So yeah, interesting. But anyway, moving on to the next thing, Eclipse's mainnet is now live. So this is their public mainnet. As you guys know, Eclipse is building essentially Solana on Ethereum because it is an SVM L2. They are essentially trying to bring the Solana apps and ecosystem and the SVM over to Ethereum as an L2. And this again is just like the beauty of Ethereum and their rollup centric roadmap, where essentially you can build anything you want as a rollup. You don't have to build an EVM rollup. You can build an SVM rollup, a Move rollup, a WASM rollup, whatever you want. You can build that on Ethereum as an L2, and that's exactly exactly what Eclipse has done here. So I'm most curious, as I've said before, to see how Eclipse does compared to Solana mainnet, or Solana L1, I guess you could call it. Because obviously, like, these things come down to liquidity, network effect, culture, the apps that are deployed there, so on and so forth. So will, degen culture or like meme coin culture take off on Eclipse like it has on Solana L1? Will Eclipse have different apps to Solana L1? Will people use it differently because it's on Ethereum, because it's a different culture, different ecosystem? I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I do think this is like a really interesting thing to keep an eye on going forward, because it will be a example for other builders as well, people building things other than the EVM, to essentially keep building what they're building. Because right now the EVM is just so dominant within the Ethereum ecosystem. Within the crypto ecosystem, the EVM is just incredibly dominant, and it's not perfect. It has its flaws, and it's definitely not going to appeal to everyone, because not everyone wants to learn Solidity. Not everyone wants to play around with the EVM, because there's a lot of intricacies to it. It's like web developers not wanting to use JavaScript, but hey, like, you're using it because it's got the huge network effect. There's so much documentation for it. There's decades worth of network effect around it. So I think the same is going to be true for Solidity and the EVM, but that does not mean that other things can't succeed. So I'm going to keep a close eye on Eclipse myself. You can go play around with this if you want. I do want to caution with these new launches again that you got to be wary of the risks as well. Like, these new kind of platforms are way riskier than the existing ones, of course. I think recently on Fuel Network, they launched their mainnet, and there was a few projects that were a little bit dodgy that may have rugged. I didn't pay attention to it too closely, but there was people in the Daily Gwei Discord channel that had some issues there. So yeah, always good to keep in mind that these things are new. There could be bugs, there could be things that go wrong with it, but definitely you just need to keep that in mind when putting money into these things. But yeah, congrats to Eclipse for launching here. Excited to see where they go with this. Alright, so I'm going to be talking about blobs for a little bit now. So blobs, Ethereum blobs, they have reached target, and they've been at target for over a week now. So as you guys know, the blob target is 3 blobs per slot, and we've been at that target, as I said, for, more than a week, like since October 29th about, and you can see it in Hill Dobby's chart here on the green line. We've basically been there, which means that we're actually earning fees from blobs now, and I think we're actually burning ETH from blobs now, which is really, really cool to see here. But essentially, it's basically hung around that line. It hasn't really gone above that, and it hasn't really been like a bidding war for blobs just yet. But with other L2s coming online, especially Unichain, which obviously Uniswap announced a couple of weeks ago, building their own chain here, they're going to be using blobs, and then more rollups coming online, like base rollups and so on and so forth, using blobs. And the fact that we're not getting a blob increase until potentially Pectra, and that's only going to be like from 3 to 4 or maybe 3 to 5. Probably not going to be huge. I'm not going to get peer DAS until end of next year. I fully expect blobs to be in some kind of price discovery. Now, what this means for L2 fees is a different story. How high do L2 fees go? Because as you guys know, the costs end up being and are passed on to the user. The more the L2s are paying for blobs, the higher the fees are for their end users. But the things that the L2s can do when it comes to blobs is that they can actually delay posting them as well. They don't have to post blobs every slot. They can delay it. Yes, you get worse security guarantees or worse transaction inclusion guarantees because you're waiting for that blob to be posted here, but they can wait, and they can essentially wait maybe not as long as they want. There is kind of a limit to it here, but they can wait a little while. They can wait minutes or tens of minutes or hours, and that would save them money. And that's why you basically see, or one of the reasons why you see that it's like this, essentially, where the line, it's straddling the green line here, the blob target. It's not like spiking hugely above it and staying up there. But again, this is a temporary phenomenon, because you can see Hill Dobby here shared that Unichain has already started posting blobs, which means it's probably launching at DevCon, which means that the blob market's just going to keep getting more and more competitive. And essentially what happens here is that, yes, they can delay their blob posting, but at the same time, like, if there's so many kind of L2s posting blobs and all of them are trying to delay it, like, you kind of have a game where, well, one will delay it, but then the other one won't delay it because they're like, well, blobs are free right now. I'm gonna put my blob in because it's really cheap. I'm gonna do it. But then if everyone's doing that, the prices are inevitably going to go up. So it becomes a game of, I guess, like chicken, and then it's done, and then you're in price discovery permanently, or not permanently, but I guess like until more blob capacity is added until PDAS, so on and so forth here. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this and how the ecosystem reacts to this and what the fees are going to be like on L2s. But as actually Bread here says in a reply, things are going to get weird with blobs because we haven't seen this before. There was a lot of FUD around blobs being free. Well, prepare for the FUD to be from like blobs being free to blobs being too expensive. Like I mean, there's always FUD, right? But like prepare for the FUD to kind of change to that. It's going to be very funny to see how the ecosystem reacts to that there. But speaking of blobs, one last thing I wanted to talk about was this new tool that Tim Robinson, who is the head of crypto research at Blue Yard, put out. So this is a tool that allows you to essentially play around with blobs, what it looks like with blobs being posted down, what it looks like based on a bunch of different variables. I'll actually load this up for you here. I think the link's actually at the end of his tweet. Yes. So this is a website you can go to yourself, and what you can do is you can essentially adjust things like the number of rollups that are live, the TPS per rollup, the target blobs per block. So right now it's 3, max blobs is 6, the ETH price, and the transaction bytes here. So I'm just leaving it on the default settings, 20 rollups, 10 TPS per rollup, 3 target blobs per block is 3, which it currently is, and max 6 blobs per block. And you can see that the average transaction price is essentially almost 0, and the total ETH burnt per day is only 33. But if we match this up, if we kind of like put this out and we go, okay, well the TPS per rollup will be a lot higher. Let's just say the TPS per rollup is like, I don't know, let's go to 500 maybe. Yeah, let's go to the max 500. That's all right. TPS per rollup, and let's say 10 rollups are doing that, and then let's say the target blobs per block are a lot higher. Let's say at like 20 target blobs per block with a max of 40, and let's just say the ETH price is like, I don't know, $6,000. You can see here that the average transaction price is still under $1. Obviously, it is not like as cheap as it is. As I said, fees tend to go up as these things kind of, I guess, roll around here. But it's still under $1. And the total ETH burnt per day is now at 14,600, which is $88 million of ETH burnt per day. I know I've gone a little bit bullish here, and obviously we don't want fees to be this high because the average transaction price is almost $1 here. But like that's how crazy it can get, even crazier than that. But that's how crazy it can get with fees still being under $1. So if we adjust this back, let's just say the TPS per rollup is about what? Let's have 162 TPS per rollup, which means an average transaction price of about 10 cents. That's still pretty palatable, I think, for most people when it comes to the L2s. And the target blobs per block, let's say that the same at 20, and then max is 40. And that's coming with PDAS, by the way, guys. We're going to scale blobs up so massively here. But if we look at that, we can still see that there's 11 million USD per day burnt of ETH. So like it's still a lot of ETH being burned per day, a lot of fees being paid per day, even though the average transaction fee is only 10 cents. And this is just blobs. This is not the normal L1 fee market, which is also burning fees every day, also generating a lot of revenue every day. So if you think that it's bearish, right now because blobs have historically been free and they're kind of like not really in price discovery yet or anything like that, we don't necessarily even need that. We just need, I mean, obviously the ETH price is higher here. It's at 6,000 USD. But like, I feel like if we've got that much activity on rollups, and essentially Ethereum is this successful, the ETH price is going to be higher anyway. So even if we adjust the ETH price down to 3,000, it would just basically it would basically put the total USD burnt per day at essentially the same, the kind of like the same number here. So yeah, I mean, even adjusting the USD price is kind of funny because like the average transaction price, the total ETH burnt per day goes down, but then the total the USD burnt per day stays around the same. So yeah, you can play around with this for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But if you want to kind of, I guess, even go like to 500. TPS per rollup, and we go to like let's say 60 target blobs per block. I'm just playing around with this live on the stream here. 60 blobs per block. The average transaction price stays around the same, but then the total ETH burnt per day is just massive. Like it's just, I don't think people realize how good blobs are and how we can still keep fees cheap at L2s or relatively cheap. Maybe not like under a cent, but like even at 10 cents, across 10 different rollups. Because if I adjust this down and I just put this to like 5 rollups, like You know what I mean? And you can adjust kind of, I guess, the blobs per block down accordingly. It's still just crazy. Like, you can go play around with this. I'm not going to spend the whole episode playing around with this, but yeah, this is a really great tool, and big, huge shout out to Tim for putting this out there. And I hope more people are paying attention to this and going to play around with that there. All right, L2Beat has a new resource called DA Beat, or Data Availability Beat, that you can go check out if you would like to see all the different DA layers. Now, this is funny because if you actually go to the website here, I think this is the website. I mean, it's on the L2Bit website, I believe, just in a different section. It's not a new website. But you can see that they're tracking all of the different DA layers. They're not tracking Blobs here or Ethereum L1 DA, because this is supposed to be DA outside of Ethereum L1. And they're tracking Celestia, Meter, Near DA, Eigen DA, and Avail as the public DA networks. And also they've got a custom DA tab here, which basically shows you all the private ones and all the ones that are like data availability committees. So in the public one, they break it down. So if I'm just focusing on Celestia here, you can see the risks of the DA. So essentially, what is the economic security, staked assets, what's the fraud detection, data availability, sampling here. What's the total value secured by Celestia? It's about 745 million. Slashable stakes about 2.5 billion. Is there a bridge? No bridge or Blobstream bridge? Yeah. So they've got two different versions: a no bridge and Blobstream. What are the bridge risks? So there's the risk of upgradability. There's no delay on that. The relay failure. There's no mechanism for that, and no scaling projects using Blobstream right now from Celestia. There are a bunch using the no bridge version of Celestia here, and you can just go down the list and see all of the different I guess like information about this. So just great to see L2Beat launch this, because as I said to you guys before, not all DA is created equal. It may seem like it is, but it is definitely not. And as I said, Ethereum DA is not on here because it is really the gold standard. Ethereum L1 DA Blobs, like it's basically, I mean, if you were to check out the DA risks, it would just be the same as Ethereum L1. Total value secured is just basically what's on L2Beat under rollups. Slashable stake is massive on Ethereum L1, and then there's essentially the bridge risks are just the L2 bridges, not the DA bridge, the actual rollup bridge itself, the bridge contracts. But that's all detailed on the L2Beat website already there, so that's why blobs aren't here yet. But you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so last up, just 3 quick shout outs. First one, I was on Bankless last week or this week. I think I recorded it last week, went live this week. They actually put this episode live on election day, which I was like, come on, guys. Like, you could have waited one more day because it would have gotten kind of more attention because everyone obviously was focused on the election. But that's fine. I'm sure everyone who needed to watch it watched it. But this episode was an ETH bull case, an Ethereum bull case for the next, I guess, like few years at least. And we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about a lot of the Ethereum FUD has been going around, roll-ups, base roll-ups, Ether's money, so on and so forth. I mean, it really was just me, David, and Ryan being ETH bulls at the end of the day. So if you want to be even more bullish on ETH than you already are, you should go check that one out there. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Second thing was that I'll be on a panel on the main stage at DevCon. This will be taking place on the 13th of November at 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. The panel title is Are Blobs Good for Ethereum? You guys know that I've been talking about blobs for a very long time now. I obviously think they're good for Ethereum, but we have a great panel of guests here. Ansgar, who is a researcher at the Ethereum Foundation. I've talked about him before. 0x Bread Guy, who is now working at Mega ETH actually, but has done a lot of great research around blobs. And Tim Robinson, the guy who created that blob tool that works as head of research at Blue Yard that I talked about before. We're going to be having a debate. It is not going to be a circle jerk panel where we all say blobs are amazing for Ethereum. No, I'm going to be moderating it, and there's going to be a debate essentially about if blobs are good for Ethereum, what are the different trade-offs, what do they mean for ETH value accrual, so on and so forth. So I hope to see a lot of you there. If you are at DevCon, I hope to see you at the panel here. This is one of the only panels that I'm on, I believe. I think it's the only one at DevCon I'm on. I have a bunch of other stuff that I'm doing. I'm just quite busy, it looks like, at DevCon. I looked at my calendar before and I was like, oh my God. But yeah, anyway, you can go kind of look at the tweet or kind of find this on the DevCon website and add it to your calendar. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And last up here, I just wanted to give a shout out. This is a very late shout out because I haven't done a refuel, but there is an Ethereum Enterprise, an Enterprise Ethereum Alliance Day happening in Bangkok on the 11th of November. So 3 days from now. This is a one-day conference, basically a side event before DevCon that you can buy tickets to. It is going to be covering everything happening in the enterprise Ethereum world. Speakers include Paul Brody from EY, and he's the chair of EEA. Karen here is the executive director of EEA, and Vitalik's going to be there, and a bunch of other people. You can see here Sandy from Scroll. There's a few other familiar names here from different projects. You've got like Nina Rong here from the Arbitrum Foundation, Paul from Gauntlet, so on and so forth. I mean, I'm not going to read out everyone's name, obviously. Rune from Maker, which is now Sky, which might be Maker again soon. But anyway, you can see the full list of speakers and attendees here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but you can go buy a ticket to that if you want to. But I think on that note, that is going to be it for today's extra long episode. Hopefully that makes up for the fact that I haven't done an episode in a week and a half. Super excited for DevCon. As I said before, hope to see many of you there. The next episode will at earliest be on the 18th of November, but if you are at DevCon, please come up and say hi. I'm very easily recognizable. I will look exactly the same as I do now. I have my little hat on. I'm not shaving the beard this time. The beard stays on until ETH is at, like, I don't know. I'm not even going to promise shaving my beard. Beard stays on until ETH's, I guess, like 100k. Let's say that. I'm not going to shave my beard again. Whenever I shave my beard, it's not good. Having the beard is good. But anyway, please do come up and say hi. Don't be shy. I'm always happy to meet as many people as possible while I'm at these conferences, especially if you're a Daily Gwei listener and enjoyer. But on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all soon. Thanks everyone.